Welcome back. This is part two of Jesus and the fine tuning of the universe. Today, we're going to begin by reviewing the William Lane Craig video. You've got the link in the email. I want you to watch it again, and this time I'm going to ask you to look for something specific. Craig talks about three live options that are possible explanations for the fine tuning of the universe. And write those down in your notes and then watch the video. As I say, watch the video, write the things down in your notes, return, and we'll take it from there. Okay? Thank you. So here is the answer. The three options are fine tuning is due to either necessity, chance, or design. Necessity, chance, or design. Well, let's look at these options. Is the fine tuning attributable to necessity? Well, obviously not. That's what we looked at in our last video. The constants, fine tuning of the laws of physics, the fine tuning of the constants and arbitrary quantities, and the fine tuning of the initial conditions render that option untenable. So what about chance? Is it just a big, huge, unbelievable fluke that we live in a life-permitting universe? Is this assortment of 150 parameters of fine tuning just the most incredible thing that ever could happen? Eh, perhaps. Well, I don't think that's really a good option. And again, I want you to watch a video that the link I've supplied for you. It's a video by a guy called Justin Brierley, who hosts a really great podcast out of Great Britain. And he has a video there where he talks about the astronomical odds of this all being by chance. So it's kind of like dumb luck or divine design kind of argument. And so we can eliminate necessity, we can eliminate chance because the odds are just so astronomical. And then that leaves us with design. Is design the best explanation? Well, for many, they would say, sure, it would appear that design is the best explanation, but not everybody accepts this idea. In fact, for atheists, naturalists, they say, well, it can't be necessity, and we know it can't be chance, but we know it can't be design. Well, why can't it be design? Oh, well, because we have to dismiss the concept of God immediately. We just don't believe in any kind of supernatural being or forces or intervention or design. There's no designer per se. And so, well, there's three options. What do you propose? Is there a fourth option? And this is where they say, yes, we've come up with a solution. And here it is. The multiverse. So the multiverse has kind of burst on the scene here, to coin that phrase, and it's in books and movies and so forth, and it's makes for good entertainment. But the multiverse theory or hypothesis is really not scientific. It's not a stretch to say that it's science fiction masquerading as real science. This hypothesis is well, what does it say? Well, there's the way that I remember what multiverse is about is I think of the word multiverse and it reminds me of multiply. Multiply means to add, add. So, for example, if you want to win in the lottery, you can win by buying one ticket and you may win. Your odds are very low. You can increase them if you buy 10, if you buy 1,000, if you buy a million. Of course, your odds increase. And in a lottery, there's always one winner. Someone finally wins. And that's the concept. With the multiverse is you say, let's multiply our odds by thinking of multiple universes. So there you have it. Multiply your odds by positing multiple universes. So the concept is this. Let's imagine that before the Big Bang, before t equals 0, there was another cause, and it's the multiverse hypothesis, which suggests that there's this hypothetical multiverse generator that spews out an infinite number of universes, which are all randomly ordered. In other words, you monkey with the laws of physics. You put in different constants and so forth, and you change the initial conditions of all of these things. Now, no one does it by design. It's totally random. It's totally fluky. But if you create a billion, zillion, gazillion, quadrillion universes, chances are one will get spit out that's kind of like Earth, and that's we're the winners of the cosmic lottery. Here we are, and that's why we're talking about it. But there are all of these universes out there somewhere, and that's the concept of the universe. We're the lucky winners. We live in a life-permitting universe. But as I said, this appears to be science fiction, and more than that, it's a kind of religion. It's a faith commitment on the part of those who do not want to believe in God, but are willing to believe and be saved by the universe theory. And it requires a kind of unbelievable blind faith to believe in the multiverse, because there's no good reason to believe in it. But let's talk a little bit about the odds, because I don't want that to escape you. Because you might be saying, yeah, but maybe it's chance. I don't want you to do that. So let's look at a document which calculates the odds, because you say, well, if it's a lottery, what are my odds? What are my odds? Well, here are the odds. Question: how many universes? Let's just even say, what if there is a multiverse? How many universes would the multiverse generator have to pump out to make it at all probable that one of them could be life permitting? Great question. Well, the physicist Lee Smolin has calculated that the odds, or ODES apparently, the odds of life permitting numbers coming up by chance is 1 in 10 to the 229th power. So here it is. Here's that number written out. The zero is going on and on and on down to 001. Those are the odds. So, I don't like my chances. I don't like our universe's chances of being the lucky winner. And this is addressed by William Lane Craig. So you've seen his animated videos, and if you haven't ever seen him in what he looks like, there's another video link that I provided for you where he's being interviewed, and the questioner says, what is the main objection to the argument of design as being, or God being the cause or the source of the design of the universe? And so if you want, just have a quick look at that video. I should say it's only about maybe 5 minutes long. And the audio is a little choppy at places, but I think you can get the gist of it. And I think based on what we have discovered so far, you'll be able to, enjoy this video and understand pretty much everything that Craig says. So look how much you've learned. Okay, do that and come back in a few minutes. Okay, thank you. So here's the next slide. Why does the multiverse hypothesis fail as an explanation for fine tuning? Well, there are many, many reasons. We've just collected a few here. Some of them were mentioned by Craig. Number one, and this stuff is in your notes as well, is the multiverse theory is flagrantly ad hoc. It's flagrantly ad hoc, wildly ad hoc, ridiculously ad hoc. So what does ad hoc mean? Ad hoc means literally it's kind of like for this purpose. It's kind of an invention to kind of get you off the hook. Or it seems like a shoehorning an explanation in without a real good reason to offer that as a possible or plausible hypothesis. It's kind of like the equivalent of in football of a Hail Mary pass. You're losing. The only way you're going to win is just throw the ball up in the air and hopefully it lands. So a desperate attempt to get off the hook. And so it's posited by those who claim to be scientists, but are quite non-scientific. In fact, the second point says the multiverse is non-scientific because it cannot be. That is, the universe or the multiverse cannot be detected. It can never be detected. It can never be studied, observed, measured, tested, or proved. So what would you think of your science prof or teacher who said, I've got a little, experiment that I want you to do using the scientific method. You're supposed to do this and this. And then it said, before you begin, you can't detect this phenomenon. You can't observe it. You can't measure it. You can't test it, or you can't prove it. Good luck. Well, that's the multiverse. There is zero scientific evidence for it. It is a faith commitment. The next point is that the multiverse generator would itself need to be fine tuned. Well, if we're talking about the fine tuning of the universe, how fine tuned must this generator be to create multiple universes with different conditions, different parameters? Hmm. Reminds me of this occurred to me while I was watching one of my grandsons this summer. He's got one of these Fisher Price kids mowers. They walk around the yard and you fill it up with bubbles, and as he walks, out of the side of it comes a bubble, and they think it's wonderful, and he's helping daddy and so forth. It is really, really cute. But if such a thing could exist, there could be a Fisher Price uh, you know universe maker by for committed naturalists. There's this machine popping out universes. It is really far-fetched, but that's the idea. And this Fisher Price multiverse generator would have to be unbelievably fine-tuned. And so then we'd be saying, okay, well, who fine-tuned the multiverse generator? It just kicks the can down the road, doesn't it? And then finally, if the multiverse exists, it does not explain the origin of the universe. It doesn't tell us anything about the cause. So we're no farther ahead in terms of asking the ultimate questions. Now, one of the great champions of the multiverse, as a viable option, is a scientist who is a theoretical physicist. His name is Lawrence Krauss, and perhaps you've seen him and heard of him. He's right in league with the so-called new atheists, strident and aggressively anti-Christian. Well, Lawrence Krauss, I wrote on this slide here. He's kind of the poster boy for aggressive anti-Christian atheism. Well, he wrote a book that was the top of the New York Times bestseller list, called "Why Is There Something Rather Than Nothing?" Well, that is the most important question that we can ask. And then his answer is a universe from nothing. A universe from nothing, where he argues that the universe just came out of nothing, ex nihilo, out of nothing. And he redefines nothing to being something. Well, the word nothing is a universal negator, where there's no thing. But for these physicists who play word games, they write these popular level books, and he'll make statements like, nothing is very creative. The nothing birthed the universe, but nothing is nothing. You can't fool most of the people. And yet this book was lauded by those in the atheistic community as being groundbreaking, but it's a miserable flop. And to give you an example of how hostile he is, you go follow his work, he'll have these things up here, these memes like, forget Jesus, the stars died so that you could be here today. And by that he means, the stars were the ones who created all of the carbon, and we're a carbon-based life form. And so if you want to thank somebody this Thanksgiving, just thank the stars. Don't, mention Jesus. So it becomes kind of silly. Well, there is a very eminent, respected uh, theoretical physicist at Columbia University called David Albert, and he wrote a scathing denunciation in the New York Times, I think it was, because he said, I've had enough of this nonsense. And he wrote this about Krauss. And by the way, while I think of it, you've got to see this guy in action. It's quite a show. He's debated William Lane Craig twice, and he's the king of ad hominem attacks. Like, Craig looks funny, he smells funny, he talks funny, so nothing that he says can be taken seriously. I'm exaggerating, but that's how low he goes. He doesn't try to counter the arguments of Craig with counter arguments or contrary evidence. He just says, "Why believe this idiot?" Right? But Craig wipes the floor with him, because Craig is one of the greatest Christian debaters in the world. So here's what Albert says: a universe from nothing is a pop science book. Ouch! A pop science book that recycles a bunch of stale ideas from physics and cosmology. Krauss's theory of nothing has nothing whatsoever to say on that, if anything, preceded on what, if anything, preceded the Big Bang. Period. Case closed. End of story. That was written a couple of years ago, and it's been strangely silent in the Krauss camp. Now, you may say I'm being a little bit harsh here. Yeah, maybe I am, but you know what? I think sometimes we put up with a lot from these these priests of atheism, and we realize that they have the weaker arguments, and so the weaker the arguments grow, the louder the protests become, and so just be aware of that Christian theists and philosophers and scientists don't have to take a backseat to anybody. Let's argue on the strength of the evidence and draw the conclusions from there. Let's go on to something else. I mentioned that there is this kind of unwritten religion of naturalism, and there's refreshingly, a very well-known philosopher, Thomas Nagel, in a moment of of unbelievable honesty, wrote these words in his book, The Last Word. He talks about the fear of religion. He says, I don't mean to refer to the entirely reasonable hostility towards certain established religions and religious institutions in virtue of their objectionable moral doctrines, social policies, and political influence. Well, I would say parenthetically, fair enough. I'm critical. I'm not hostile. I'm critical towards a lot of the stuff that wears the mantle of theism and Christianity. So far so good. And he continues, nor am I referring to the association of many religious beliefs with superstition and the acceptance of evident empirical falsehoods. I am talking about something much deeper. And again, parenthetically, I'd say I share that frustration with certain people in the Christian camp who are scientists or spokespeople who say that the Earth was created in 6 solar days and the universe is 6,000 years old. I just think that puppy it needs to be given a decent barrel. It's no good. It doesn't work. There's too much contrary evidence. So in saying that, I think he's right. I mean, we don't want to hold on to superstitions. We need to be prepared to accept the facts, and then believe that all truth rightly interpreted and all scripture rightly interpreted will merge, because all truth is God's truth. So far so good. He says, no, I'm not talking about those objections. He says, I am talking about something much deeper, namely the fear of religion itself. All right, what does he mean? I speak from experience, being strongly subject to this fear myself. Hey, this is a fear which I experience. I want atheism to be true. I have a predisposition towards atheism. And I'm uneasy by the fact, I'm troubled by the fact that some of the most intelligent and well-informed people I know are religious believers. It isn't that I don't believe in God and naturally hope that I'm right in my belief. I hope there is no God. He's saying, I don't want there to be a God. It's that I hope there is no God. I don't want there to be a God. I don't want the universe to be like that. Refreshingly upfront. I think you'll agree. Now, I have the words of another young, budding philosopher, and I say that with tongue in cheek. I taught a little class for some children a few years ago where we were teaching them apologetics. Yeah, apologetics to kids 8 to 12. And here was a question which I let them respond to, for homework. Do you believe in God? If so, then why? And if you don't believe in God, then why not? So this little girl called Amy Kim, Korean Canadian, she was 11 years old at the time. She answered the question, expressed her belief in God, and then she added something at the end there. She said, "Oh, and by the way, I have a theory about why people don't believe in God." And now, this is incredible. I couldn't have said it better than Nagel said it. I think some people don't believe in God because they don't like him. Ouch. What a zinger. Unquestionably true. Some people don't like the idea of living in a universe designed by God. Mm, well done, Amy. So let's move on. So we have seen that the scientific and philosophical evidence leads us to conclude that we live in a designer universe. That is the best choice. Not necessity, not chance, not the multiverse, but the supreme being, the supreme intelligence, also known as God. And as I said, when we do a conceptual analysis of what this first cause must be like, it's very fruitful in terms of its theological implications. And this is in your notes as well. In the notes, it says the designer is thus a singular God who is transcendent, meaning outside the universe, a personal agent. Why a personal agent? Well, the designer or creator would have to have a mind capable of conceiving of the fine tuning. You talk about pretty sophisticated engineering, but not only knowing how to do it, but having the freedom of will and volition to choose to do it, to actualize it. And furthermore, this being must be immensely powerful. We use the term uh, omnipotent, all powerful, given the complexity and scope of the universe. And like the video concludes, both the Kalam cosmological argument video concludes with this, and the fine tuning video concludes with much like God. It's a nice way to end it up. So let's transition to our examination of the biblical text, because after all, we are linking it with Colossians. I want to share with you words written by a really important guy. Uh, This guy is Robert Jastrow. He was director of NASA's lunar landing program. So now we're going back to the 60s, back when I was just a young lad. So Jastrow, smart guy, and he writes in his book called God and the Astronomers. He says, for the scientist who has lived, he's speaking of himself self-reflectively here, for the scientist who has lived by his faith in the power of reason, the story ends like a bad dream. He has scaled the mountains of ignorance. He is about to conquer the highest peak. As he pulls himself over the final rock, he is greeted by a band of theologians who have been sitting there for centuries. Well, it's interesting that modern science points us back to Scripture. Let's look at the Christium one more time as we start to bring things to a conclusion. Our text is Colossians 1:15-20. Remember, we dealt with verse 15. The Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For in him all things were created, heaven and earth, visible, invisible, thrones, powers, rulers, authorities. All things have been created through him and for him. And that brings us to the scripture which we want to dovetail with the fine tuning argument. He, that is Jesus, is before all things. So what that is saying is, before the singularity, before the universe was created ex nihilo, which is a Latin phrase meaning out of nothing, not Krauss's nothing, no, but nothing, nothing previously existing. He is before that. In other words, he is the uncaused cause, the one who lit the fuse of the Big Bang. He is before all things, eternal, because the cause of the universe must be immaterial, must be eternal. And then look at the last phrase, because this is really amazing. And in him, Paul says, everything, all things hold together. Now, Paul certainly wasn't writing this and singing this worship song thinking as a 21st century cosmologist or astrophysicist. No. But the word that he uses here is really striking. It's a verb, and it's in your notes. So let's look at the notes, and we're going to do a little more Greek today. Yahoo! You're all scholars now. Paul says that in him, all things cohere. That's how it's translated. And it's really interesting. I checked, I think about 60 translations or versions of the Bible. I didn't manually do it. You can do it on a website. You display them all. It's uniformly, they all render it kind of this idea that in him, everything gels. It's all held together. It coheres. I like that word. It coheres. It doesn't fly apart. Now, the Greek uh, word here is sunistemi, which is a form of a verb. There's a transliteration, sunistemi. The upsilon sound in Greek becomes like a y, like synergy or words like that. Synistemi. And the pronunciation, you can try it on your own. And then here's the definition. Now, remembered we talked about words having a semantic range. So we're not just picking out what works for us, but it is the uniform determination of Greek scholars that the definition that's appropriate here is the idea to have been permanently framed, structured, so that it holds together. It coheres. Now, if we think of that in terms of our study, it really does perhaps have something to say about the role of Jesus as the one who programmed the initial conditions, the one who caused this orderly unfolding of the universe, who created the laws and the parameters so that it would create this unique life-permitting planet in which we live. Now, we're going back to our good old friend N.T. Wright. He was very helpful in our Revelation study, as you'll recall. The verb is in the present tense, he says, synisteme, indicating that everything has held together in him. And the reason he has held together, it's because it's in the perfect sense. It's a past action, and yet its effects continue. So we could even perhaps phrase it like this: who created cohesion and continues to hold it together, continues to cause it to cohere. And then Wright says, through him, the world is sustained, prevented from falling into chaos. Yeah, so we live in a cosmos. Well, why is it called a cosmos? It's because it's very orderly. It's not chaotic. It's a cosmos. And from the word cosmos, we get our word cosmetics, by the way, which kind of, my wife and I were talking about this, and she says, yes, when I wake up in the morning and I look in the mirror, my face looks chaotic. And then a few minutes later, it looks cosmetic, beautiful. That's the idea. So here's the conclusion. Jesus created the universe out of nothing, fine-tuned it for life, and is presently sustaining it, keeping it running in an orderly fashion. He is, as Hebrews says, keeping all things together by the power of his word. So that's the link between our science study and the Jesus described in the Christ hymn. So that will do it. I hope that you've benefited from this study, and let this not be the end of your excursion into systematic or natural theology, I should say. But now that you're aware of it, just be watchful for articles and things that will come across, the internet to you in your newsfeed, for example, or buy some good books. Buy a William Lane Craig book, or watch some of his videos. I think you'll find it very invigorating, refreshing, and encouraging. And after all, that's what natural theology does. It bolsters our faith, and it helps us build bridges to approach others who don't yet know the truth about our God. And so thanks for joining me. We'll see you again sometime soon.